Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I have some positions for you to solve. To categorize these positions, we can say that it is a calculation training. This means you have to use calculation while defending. Now I am going to present you three positions from the current ongoing women's chess Olympiad. So on the board, on the screen, this is the position from the game Muzychuk Maria versus Kashlianskaya Alina. It is from round 11th of Chess Olympiad. So you can solve this puzzle. It is black to play, and you can see white has given us check. So there are 2 to 3 options for us. So calculate properly and find the solution. Believe me, these positions are very difficult because in the game the defending player was not able to find the correct solution and save the game. From the 3 squares available, we can easily eliminate the move king e8 because it loses to queen into c6 check, and at the same time we are losing our rook. So this was quite easy, but the toughest challenge here is how to choose between the squares g7 and g8. So what is the correct solution? And the correct solution is the move king g7. So before this, let's see why king g8 is a bad move. And this was played in the game. King g8 was played in the game. Now white's main idea in this position is to get in the move e6. But directly it is not possible because queens can be exchanged. So white plays the move queen e7. Now he is preparing for e6 move. After queen e7, black does not have any satisfactory defense. For example, if in the game black played the move queen f2, and what is the idea of queen f2? Black wants to give check, and after king moves queen b2 checkmate, so it's a quite deadly threat. But white can play a very nice move, that is king a1. A very beautiful prophylactic move. So after queen g2, see the queen now cannot leave this 3 squares because rook will come here. So after queen g2, so it also stops queen g5 check. White can now simply play e6 and open up black's king. So after f into e6, queen into e6 check, king h8, queen into f5, and king is completely exposed, and white just gave some checks and black resigned here. Black will soon get mated here. Now this happened in the game and Alina lost this game. Now let's say instead of queen f2, one more idea is to play the move c5, and the idea of c5 is to bring rook a6 and then cover the e6 square. Again, directly e6 is not possible here because of this deadly threat of queen b8. So it is very important to see this resource from black side. And that's why white's excellent move here is again the move king a1, a prophylactic move. And why now rook a6 doesn't work? Because king is on g8. So this is a big difference between king g7 and king g8. Now there comes rook d8 check, king g7 and queen f8 check, and it is game over for black. So see, that is the difference. Now we will check the line of king g7, the answer. So king g7 is the correct move. And now you cannot continue with the move queen e7 like last variation because black here has the move c5, and after king a1, rook a6 is in time, and after rook d8 there is no check, and if he plays rook d8 then we can use it to give white check. Okay, so this is the difference. Now for king g7, white can play this move queen f6. Again pause the video and now choose the best square for the king. g8 or f8? The correct square is f8. King f8 is the correct square because now after king a1, now king a1 is very important move in every variation because it allows the move e6. So after king a1, black can play the move rook e8, and when white plays e6, black can take it with the rook. And if rook d8 check, there comes rook e8 and rook is protected, and black manages to save the game. But in the variation king g8, the same thing will happen. King a1, rook e8 and e6. Here you cannot take with the rook because of rook d8 and it's game over. See, very minute differences and very instructive one. And if black takes with the f pawn, then king is totally open after rook d7, queen h1 check, king a2, and there are no checks to white king, and these are the deadly threats here. So I hope you got this puzzle right. Let's move on to the next example. So this position is our second example. The players are Tania Sachdev from India and Carissa from USA. It is white to play. Tania is playing white and here she went wrong. To make it easier for you, there are two moves you have to calculate and decide one from it. So queen c8 check or queen b8 check. Before starting to solve, you can see what is going on in this position. What is black's threat? Black's threat here is to play queen f2 check. King h1 is bad because of queen into f1 check. So king h2, then black will play queen g3 check, king g1, and there comes the move e2 trying to deflect the bishop and checkmate on g2. So this is a very deadly threat from black. So now think, pause the video and try to calculate whole variation, queen c8 or queen b8. Again, it's very difficult. In the game, Tania went wrong with the move queen c8 check, because queen c8 can be met with the move rook g8. So now there are no checks, and if white plays the move queen f5, we can see that the idea queen f2 check, king h2, queen g3, king g1 and e2 is successful. If white starts giving checks like queen f6, rook g7, and at some point white is out of checks. So he has to give his rook here, and this is completely winning position for black. In the game, actually, even after the move queen c8 check, black chose the wrong move and she played the move king g7. And again Tania went wrong. So it was necessary to give queen c7 check back, because after king h6, white has this nice move queen f7 and that attacks the f4 pawn. Now the same thing is not going to work. For example, queen f2 check, king h2, queen g3, king g1, and after e2 there is queen f8 check, and there are checks again and again. So this is not working for black. Okay, but the correct continuation was to play the move queen b8 check, and you can see the difference. If black is playing king g7, then we can again give queen c7 check, and after king h6 there is queen f7, right? We saw this variation. But after queen b8, what if rook g8? But here the difference is quite simple. We can take on d6, and now after taking on d6, we are threatening this deadly checkmate. So black has to, if he plays queen f2, king h2, queen g3, king g1, he cannot play e2 because of queen h6 mate, and white is completely saving the game. Next he can also play queen f4. There are a lot of checks here, and that's how white could have saved the game. But in the game, Tania went for the wrong continuation and lost the game. Let's move on to the next example. Here comes our next example. The game is between Grandmaster Ushenina Anna and Kiolbasa Oliwia. We know WIM Kiolbasa Oliwia was 9 out of 9 in the Chessolympiad. In the 10th round she drew, and in the 11th round she lost this position. Now she had a chance to save the game. Oliwia is playing as black. These pawns are going here. So you can pause the video and try to find the continuation which saves the day for black. It's a calculation, simple calculation training. Okay. The correct move here is to play king c3, and the idea is to play king c2. So for example, if white plays the move b5, here comes the move king c2, and rook cannot leave the b file because then b5 is lost. And if he plays rook b4, there comes the move king c3, and this is a draw. Instead of the move b5, let's say if white continues with the move king e3, then we can attack the b pawn with rook f4, and when it gets pushed, now we can attack the b1 rook with king c2, and when rook leaves the b file, we can play rook b4. After rook a5, here we get the move king d1, and the rook is completely tied to the defense of b5 pawn. The king is coming on the king side, and if he plays b6, rook into b6, rook into g5, and after king e1, rook g4, king f1, this is drawn endgame. In the game, black played a very wrong continuation, that is g4. So white took on g4, and after rook f4, black is quite behind. Now white can directly play b5, rook into g4. White can play the move king f3, defending the g2 pawn, rook g3 check, king f2. After king f2, rook g7, b6, rook b7, and after king f3, the h4 pawn is lost, and white slowly converted this position. It will take some efforts and time, but this is winning for white. So in the game, black didn't find the move king c3 and played g4, and she lost this game. So I hope you got all these three puzzles right and like these positions. Please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.